right. Tonight, Nate Liermann is joining me, and we are going to talk about Nate's heartwarming career as a retirement living advisor. So far, Nate has been dedicating his time, energy, and career towards helping people that are making the emotional change of moving into a retirement living facility. I can't wait to get into it with you, Nate. First, I just want to thank you for taking the time to decide to spend your evening with me and have this conversation. And I'll let you start. How have you been since we last got together, which I think was at Carter's wedding?
Yeah, I mean it's probably about a year to the date, honestly, because I think they got married back in July. But yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's been a while since we last chatted, but yeah, looking forward to talking about this topic and diving into it a little bit. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and people create these ideas around what retirement living is. And so, any way I can spread the word and spread the love on what it actually is and the positivity behind it, it's anything I can do, you know. So, thank you for having me on too. Appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. I genuinely think it's one of the nicest things I've ever heard of when we were talking at Carter's wedding and you were telling me about what you did and how much you enjoy doing what you're doing, but also how beyond that, you want other people to know, like people that may have negative connotations about it, whether it's for themselves or for their loved ones or someone that they know. You almost like sounded like you wanted to spread the word to just help the overall awareness of everyone in the community, both people that are going to face it themselves and then people that are helping their family and loved ones do it. And, you just don't hear too many people wanting to do that. So it's really incredible. It really touched me. I haven't forgotten it since we talked about it, and so I just think it's amazing that you want to do that. I genuinely do, and it's like something that I couldn't do. It's very hard for me. My mom is a nurse, and my wife's sister is a nurse, and I've talked with them about helping people, and I can only imagine how hard it is, and I know it's something that I don't think I could do.
It's
So.
yeah, no, it's a that's a really good way of putting it. I think that's cool. I think it takes special kinds of people. I think there's what I have learned in the years I've been doing this is there are people who are natural caregivers. You know, there are people who are naturally good at just, taking care of other people. Uh, and not to say not everybody can be a good caregiver. Sometimes it's just easier for a lot of people, you know? Um, and it's not even all the way, maybe caregiver might even be a bit of a stronger word. I think it's also about uh, just a generalization of helping people and what it looks like. It looks different for every job at, say, a retirement community, or as a nurse, like what your mom and your mom's sister are doing. They see it in a different lens that somebody who's working in the kitchen or working in the nursing team or housekeeping or in the enrichment team, or it looks different. But I think everybody has their own way of doing it. And what's cool about this kind of job and in this line of work, it kind of lets you do it the way that you wouldn't want to do it. You get to help just by being you, and being able to be in a job where you can just be you. I don't know. It's pretty special. I think there's no fake customer service tone,
Yeah,
that you have to put on. You just got to go do you and be a good person, and it all works out in the long run.
yeah, no, that is probably true. Just being your genuine true self is going to come through and help people. And one of the comments you made when we were talking about kind of like having this conversation was how it's an emotional decision for people. So I think if you're just genuinely being you, and in the very brief times that we've talked, you're very positive and it just kind of exudes from you. So I think you being you really does probably help people that are going through a difficult time. I can tell you're an excellent listener and you really get what we're talking about right away. And so, like, I'm sure that, you're just, I can see how you're really helping people.
Oh, well, thank you.
Um,
I appreciate that. I really do. I think when at that point in people's lives, I think it can be harder to have those people around you that you who really listen and take time for you. And so many of people at that point in their lives, they have lost friends, they have lost family members. I mean, they've lost their parents at that point. They've lost aunts, uncles, cousins, sisters and brothers, and maybe even losing some kids. And I think there's just can be a general grayness that is around that aging generation because you deal with a lot, you really do. On top of everything else that you're going through, maybe you're having your own health issues or you're, struggling with some things. And so, uh, one thing that I've always found fascinating when doing this work is people as we age, are there's certain brain functions that just don't work as well as they did when we were 30, 40, right? That's just how it works, motor functions and those kinds of things just do take a bit of a toll as you age. That just makes sense. But, and then physical, typically, you're not going to be, doing hurdles over anything, at that age. But one thing that stays the same, whether you're 15, 30, or 60 or 80 or 100 years old, is desire and getting value out of your life and purpose. People don't realize that just because they're older, that they can't think the same way I do. Well, that's kind of BS. They have every desire to pick up their grandkid and swing them around just like they did when they were 30, 40. They just can't do
Yeah.
it. And so not only are they accepting that they can't do it anymore, they are also realizing that they've just not, yeah, they just physically can't do it, maybe, or mentally are having a hard time with it. So it's a lot of aging through this point and that point in life is acceptance and really twisting that narrative as what it means to be independent and what it means to be you anymore and still getting purpose and value out of your life.
Wow. I never thought about um, the the different deterioration that you were talking about, whether it's cognitive or your physical. I think is comes to mind for me, but I never thought about the desire and value part of it. And I mean, that's a really scary thing because we're all kind of marching towards that. I don't, and it's probably not easy for people to talk about that. Um, would you be able to maybe back up and do like an overview of like what it means to be a retirement living advisor? Um, and maybe I know that there's probably a wide range of retirement living facilities, like kinds where people maybe it's just a community of people that are at that same age in life and they'd rather live in this community than live at home, but basically they can take care of themselves, all the way to like people need total daily assistance in order to function. Can you talk about the facility you work at and maybe an overview of your role?
Yeah. So I work at the Legacy Terrace, part of the Legacy Retirement Communities in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I initially started there back in 2016, and I started as a dining server. So what they do at the Legacy specifically is they do restaurant style dining. So you're not just going to the cafeteria and picking up your slop. I mean, this is full on restaurant style dining with a server and three courses, and on Friday nights we do steak, wine, and seafood. So it's not just it's kind of like a cruise ship. A lot of people compare it to a cruise ship. Um, and so what really was just fascinating to me with this job was just connecting with these people, it's a little different from normal food service. And I worked in food service in high school, so I was pretty used to it. But what was nice was you got the same customers every time, right? So you start to get to
Okay.
know them. You get to know their likes and dislikes. You get to know who they are. So it's easy, it's comfortable. You're working with the same people. It's like if you've ever worked at a bar, you got regulars, right? You work at bars,
Right.
you have regulars, and they're like, hey, what's up, Bob? You talk to Bob for a
Yeah.
while. It's just like that, but every day with 200 residents. So it's something pretty special, and it's really cool. You build these good connections with that. And I think that's what really attracted me to this job because initially I was going to school for computer programming and was like, that's a total flip flop. You're working with people in one field all the time versus trying to avoid people, and working with computers in your other job. So, um, diving into it was kind of interesting. But my roommate Mac, he was the first one to get a job there, so he convinced me to get to work there, and it's
Oh wow, I
been
didn't know that.
it'll yeah he started there because his two cousins worked there, and so I just was like, all right, I need a job, and they gave you dinner at night, so like poor college student, that's hell of a deal. So um but yeah, so beyond that, I was in dining for about 3.5 years, and then I just kept taking every opportunity I could. I realized computer programming wasn't my passion anymore. It was people. And so I really wanted to work with people, and I interned for the job that I'm currently in and loved it, wanted it, but there was no opening. So I was just like, "Hey, get me in, give me a chance, let me do whatever I can," and just did a bunch of random odd jobs for the longest time, just kind of filling in to put myself out there, and applied for a few jobs and didn't get them within the same company. But uh, finally, it wound up being the right time for me, and it's been great. And so now it's been about 3.5 years now in the retirement living advisor role, and doing that. Excuse me. Basically, yeah. I mean, what does it mean to be a retirement living advisor? Well, it means a lot of things. There's a lot of things that are not on the job description, but it happens. But ultimately, what I am tasked to do is to ultimately help people figure this decision out and go through this process. Um, it's a process. It's not somebody. Basically, what I do, I communicate with families. I communicate with those prospects, people who are wanting to move in or looking at moving in, and working with them through it. It's conversation. It's not, look at my shiny building with all of these cool people, and guess what? Oh, you don't have to worry about meals anymore. Oh, guess what? I have transportation. You can't drive? I got you. That's not like, yes, those are important things, but another thing, as with um that generation, you're looking at a group of people that were born and raised just after World War II, during World War II, and the Great Depression. That's what I'm working with, right? So what did they do? They scrounged every single penny, right? And they own their home. They're living okay in their home, they might say. And now I'm asking them to shovel out thousands of dollars a month to live in a community where those things are taken care of. I am asking them to give up parts of their independence to move in to an apartment, which most of them have never lived in. They've lived in their home for 50 years.
Right.
So that's what a lot of the discussion is this. It's emotional. It's not transactional. People don't come in and say, I want to move. There's actually been a poll. There's a statistic out there. I'm not kidding you, 90% of the people who walk into the building that first time for that first tour to look around and see what we're all about are not going to move. They don't want to move. So imagine going to a car dealership and not wanting to buy a car. Why would you be at the car dealership, right?
Right. So they just have to move, or what has caused them to
It
be there?
That's a great question. I mean, it can be a wide variety of things. A lot of the times, the adult children are the ones who kind of start that conversation. Not every time, but that is a lot of the time. But there are also times when those folks realize that mowing the yard isn't as fun anymore, or
Yeah.
cooking and cleaning it's just hard on your body, and you just can't do it as well anymore. You're not cooking. It's hard to cook for one, as a single person. Maybe you're living in a home and all of your kids are out of state. I mean, think about the safety of it all. And you hear stories from friends. Oh my gosh, he just fell down the stairs and laid there for 3 days. It's terrifying. There's a lot of fear that goes into aging. Um, and so we preach being proactive and being ahead of the game. I mean, we just talked about cars, being in the car business. If you were to, let's say, okay, let's just say, here's a little analogy. Let's say you plan on, you want to buy a new minivan for the family, something a little bit safer, something of higher quality that's going to work pretty well. Maybe you're getting another kid, so you need a little bit more room, whatever. So you do a little bit of research and you go and find the exact, make, model, year that you want. Go test drive a little bit. Maybe a couple months later, you finally make that decision, right? Then, so that's one person. That's somebody being proactive. Okay.
Okay.
On the other hand, we have somebody who uh, wants a new car and then gets into a car accident, isn't prepared for what new car to buy. They don't know what to get anymore. They're not being proactive. So they go to the dealership, get what's there, boom, okay, this is good enough. Maybe they weren't very happy when they get home. It didn't have the top down camera view and the automatic, button, all that stuff, but it's what they got. So that's what the same way with retirement living is. It's being proactive and being ready for these things, because bottom line, a lot of people, the reality is that not a lot of people can stay in their home until they are deceased, essentially.
Yeah, being proactive is really like I was thinking about this before we were talking tonight, and I'm really excited to have you on, and hopefully this will change my perspective a little bit. um, I mean, like, I just like you said, like I don't think I've ever talked with anyone that says that they're looking forward to that period. And also me myself, I'm like actively like thinking I've got to do like proactive in terms of how can I take care of myself so I'd never have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reality is that like there's a good chance we all will have to do that, and being proactive so that if it does happen, you like know what to expect and you're ready for it. That's probably way better than the attitude I have, so
Yeah.
like I should definitely think about it. And I'm not like a stubborn person where I wouldn't think about it. It's just like your natural instinct is like, I don't know if maybe it's a fear, but like, I don't want to do that. I mean, it's just scary to me?
Yeah. I
So,
mean, and you're somebody who's been independent for so long. You raised a family. You took care of grandkids and sick children, and had a business or started a job or did a podcast on the weekends and nights every once in a while. Like you've done all
yeah.
these. People have done these cool things, and uh, when you get to that point in your life where you're not doing those things anymore, and there's loss, that's where you just have to look at things, and you just gain different perspectives. It's not like just because somebody moves in doesn't mean they're less independent than somebody who's at home still. That's not how it works. It may seem that way because, oh well, they're not cooking, I'm cooking, so I'm just fine. Well, that's not entirely true. I think everybody has different values and what they value in their life. I think people who are that stubborn, independent people who are going to cook no matter what. I don't care if it's, sloppy joes every night, I'm cooking it. Or
Yeah.
versus people who realize they can't do it as much anymore, and cooking's not something I enjoy doing. So I kind of want a little bit, I want a break from that, or I want socialization. I've been in my home all the time. People during COVID, oh man, I mean, so many people were affected by that. I think that's a whole other topic, but um, you start to realize that independence just looks differently when you. It just looks a lot different when you get older. Um, what I like to tell a lot of the folks who come in to visit me is I take care of the things that you can't do, don't want to do, have a hard time doing, so that you can just go do the things that you want to do. I'm going to cook for you so you can go to a Royals game, which we do at my place. We drive people to a Royals game and go watch Kansas City Royals, or we'll drive you to the Lead Center and go do this. If you like to socialize, if you like to be around people, go play cards, bingo. How can I help fulfill that hole in your life that you're feeling, and also take care of the things that you're struggling with or are not as easy anymore? A lot of the times it's, I don't want to, put more on my kids. That's a lot of the reason why people kind of accept this decision. Um, and how badly do you want your own kids to go live their life with their kids? And experience, baseball and t-ball games instead of coming over to take care of you at night or something. I mean, there's just such a wide range of things that people go through and run through their heads, and every scenario is different. Every person, every situation is unique in their own right. So what one person might think, oh, you can take care of the meals for me, that's amazing. Somebody might say, well, I like cooking still. Well, so
Okay.
it's yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I apologize to jump in. I wanted to ask though, like, do people have are people basically free to come and go as they want? Are
Yeah.
they able to do basically what they want? Like if sounds like you offer a service where you could take them to a baseball game, but like if they have I guess I'm not quite sure, like, are people able to take care of themselves fully? Like they can drive, like, hey, I own a car, I'm gonna grab a car and go to the football game and I'll be back. Or is
Yeah.
it kind of like you need to check in and out and you need permission, or how does that work?
Yeah, gotcha. Good question. So basically, it, how do I mean, really, it's you are free to come and go as you please. You are a free human being. So at my community specifically, we have a lot of let's go back because I kind of went on a tangent there, but going
No,
back a
no.
little bit, let's talk about like the types of living there are, right? So there are a whole encompassing in the big world, we have 55 plus communities. Okay, a lot of those 55 plus communities are maybe a community, what how I like to classify it at least, is a community that, you know, offers some amenities, some, not a lot, but mostly you're living in a community or an apartment complex that is all 55 plus people. So you have a chance for better camaraderie, socialization, maybe a couple of activities a week, maybe some meals, possibly some of them I've seen. Some of them don't even have all that. You just live with older people too. The next step up is what we call independent living. So you're getting that 55 plus, except it's more amenities focused. So you're getting, meals, 2 to 3 meals a day. You're getting housekeeping once a week. You're getting uh, activities galore. You're getting maintenance. You're getting all of your utilities are included. You could run 10 baths a day and it won't, increase your rent. Um, you're getting fitness opportunities, you're getting socialization opportunities, you're getting, yeah, like I said, activities galore. So that's what independent living is. So amenities focused, that's where people get to make a choice. They're choosing to move. Okay. Assisted living is the next step. So assisted living, you do have a little bit of you still get some choice. There is not like it's end all be all with assisted living. Assisted living is essentially everything you get in independent living, all of those amenities and meals, yada, yada. But you also are getting that nursing support. You're getting, maybe you need help with showers and every once in a while. So you have a nurse to help with that. Or you're needing help with medication management. So you're having a med aide come around and do your medications for you. So really more of care focused with assisted living. People who need that help, who are a lot of it is need based. It's not as much I want to move to assisted living. It's I can't do these things at home. I cannot do what we call activities of daily living. You know how to dress and put on your clothes and take a shower, but imagine if you couldn't do that anymore or needed help with that. That's assisted living. Um, Beyond that, there's two more mainly. There is memory care, which is Alzheimer's, dementia focused care. Usually, like a locked. You're getting everything in assisted living. You're going to be in a locked facility. You can't just leave. Every facility, community I talked about, style of living, up until this point, you're a free human being. You come and go as you want. You can go to all your kids' games. You can go. You can stay out all night, all weekend. You are a free person. Uh,
I like
then
that. All night, all weekend.
yeah, and then yeah, like I said, the memory care. That's where it's a little bit more strict because we're talking about a pretty high level of care that not assisted living, independent living, those things aren't set up to take care of. So it's a locked facility. Usually nine, there. I think it's a requirement for them to be a memory care community. They have to be a locked community as well. So there's a door code to get in and out of every door, and residents can't just walk right out to the world. So I mean, it's such a very niche and specific style of care that it's really important because there's such a rampant number of that people are going through with that. And then on top of that, then after that is the highest level of care, kind of the two. I don't know, I guess there's two more really, but there's skilled nursing care and hospice care. You're getting skilled nursing is going to be pretty high levels of care. It's like a double assisted living in a way. It's sort of like okay, so in a lot of assisted livings, not all of them, you to qualify, you have to have one person, one nurse physically help you. That's the maximum. If you have to have like two nurses help, like my assisted living, you can only have one nurse help you get up. But if it's taking two people or like a lift, like a mechanical lift to physically get you up, or if you have a feeding tube, or if there's just a lot of wires and things keeping you going, that's where we're kind of looking at that skilled nursing level of care.
Okay.
And then beyond that, the last one is hospice care, where it's typically end of life. I've seen where people move from my community to hospice care and they're gone within a week. That seems to be a lot. You're given days to weeks when you're in in hospice care most of the time. So yeah, that's kind of the range of cares that you see in retirement living as a whole.
Thank you. That was super helpful.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I realized I
not
didn't explain that at all when we were talking.
no, no. That that's really helpful. I mean, I think I've heard of probably all of these throughout the course of my life, but at the same time, it's like when if you don't stop and think about it and put it in one context or one setting, it's like I don't really know where people are at. And sometimes I think people just throw around a term like assisted living and
Yes,
they really mean all of it. Like they could
yes,
be talking about anything and it just they assume that people know which
yeah,
one they mean.
and yeah,
Probably not. Go
you make a
ahead.
very valid point. It can be very generalized. I have so many calls where people are like, well, we're kind of looking for assisted living for my mom. And I go, oh, okay, well, talk to me a little bit about what she's going through. Oh, well, she's just having a hard time with meals and keeping them up. I'm like, oh, okay. So let me educate. It's a lot of it. There's just a lack
Yeah.
of education out there, really, that people don't realize there are so many different types of care that can encompass so many different needs and desires in your life. So,
So I'm curious, like, does your facility and then also maybe just talk in general about like does your facility offer all of these levels? Do most facilities offer all of these levels, or is it sort of like we do this and other places do that?
yeah, I mean, uh, I would probably say the latter. I mean, oh man, yeah, I would say, okay, so at my community, we do independent living and assisted living. Our majority is independent living. But we do have memory care on our campus. It's not within the building, but it's on our campus. Um, I want to say there's two communities in Lincoln that encompass all of those levels of care that we talked about. I'm pretty sure there's only two. A lot of them you're going to see we only do independent living. Some of them are only 55 plus. Some of them are only assisted living. Some of them are only memory care. So, and then some of them are a lot of them you're going to see are a mixture of independent living and assisted living. That's probably the most that you'll see out there. Um, but yeah, it's a weird industry because none of them are the same in any way. So it's just uh, it's a lot of research and a lot of work to really start this process too. So,
Okay. So let's say I'm somebody that whether I don't know, whether let's just take me for example and say I'm single because my spouse has passed away.
hmm
Um, and I have some money.
hmm
Um, but me, I've sold my house and I really have basically like liquefied my assets to where it's just one pool of money and it's giving me monthly income and I'm kind of living on that. So it's not like I have all these other things, but that's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
And I decide I want to go there because I could use a little bit of help and also I'd like the community, so I decided to go in. And I lived there for like 6 years and now I'm totally out of money. Um, does what is available to me get impacted by the fact that now I'm basically going off of funding?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question, and a very sad reality that I run into pretty frequently. Um, yes, I mean, bottom line is yes. It if you're out of funds, it does limit where you can sleep at night. It does. Um, here's the there at least a bit of a fortunate thing is that all skilled nursing communities, I'm pretty sure, like I'm very confident in this, but um, are under the federal law, not jurisdiction, but federal laws and mandates. So they have to accept Medicaid waiver because that's a federally funded program. Assisted living, I think, falls in a similar bracket. Well, and maybe not because there's some memory cares in town that don't accept Medicaid waiver. So it can really be wishy-washy. It's totally, I want to say it's community dependent otherwise. Um, let's say, but here's what kind of makes legacies a little special. We're family owned and family operated since the 90s. And we have, so basically, our founder, Jerry Joyce, he was our founder. He, in the 90s, he was looking for a community for his mom, Bernice. And Bernice was at home in just doing her own thing, but was having a hard time with just the normal day to day, the meals, the cooking, the cleaning, all that. And so he wanted to see what options there were out there to make her life a little easier. He looks around, and in Lincoln in the 90s, we're looking at two places, and both of them were nursing homes. These were
Okay.
old school, like you throw mom in there and leave her be, and that's it. Just kind of that.
And
Uh,
that's what I always picture because I
yeah,
used to visit my great grandma growing up,
yeah,
and there was like a code she couldn't
yep,
really leave, and that's always what I picture.
yes. And I had the same. I mean, you're born and raised York. I mean, you have small
Yeah,
town. It's not upscale. It's not. I mean, it is what's the word we use for it? It's industrialized, I think is the word. It's just cold. It's not warm. It's
yeah.
not welcoming. And so that was my perception. As and that perception is what so many people have, especially our prospective residents, because that's what they did with their parents. They put them in that cold, dark room that's industrialized and mechanical because that's all there was. So when Jerry was looking for Bernice back in the 90s, he was like, this is not going to fly. My mom is not living in one of these. So in retaliation, he built the legacy on 56 and Pioneers. And so that was so the philosophy is doing it for mom. You're just doing exactly what Jerry would do for mom. And we put residents first in every way. And that even includes in the financial aspect because you said let's say you lived with me for 6 years and you run out of money. That does not matter because as long as you can pay 2 years of private pay, 2 years out of your own pocket, and live with us for that length of time, you're golden. You're good. I mean, we'll take care of you financially. Yeah, I mean, we've never kicked anybody out for financial reasons unless if they're being mischievous. I don't think that's ever been a thing, but we take care of people. Bottom line, and we accept Medicaid waiver in our assisted living, and uh, the other really cool thing is we don't really have a limit on our Medicaid waiver. A lot of communities in town, we only accept two Medicaid waiver because the state essentially, when you're on a Medicaid waiver, real quick, the state gives that community X amount of dollars. And that X amount of dollars is usually significantly less than what normal rent for that apartment would go for, right? So every Medicaid waiver that a business takes on is a poor business decision. As weird and gross as that sounds, but that's the truth. You're losing money. So a lot of communities in town do have a limit on their Medicaid waivers that they can have.
Wow,
We,
it's like they'll just say like two people,
yeah,
like that's it.
yeah. A lot of people, some of them will be 2, 3 to 5. I remember when I first started, I think God, we had anywhere up to like 15. But that's because we just take care of our people. You spend money with us, we got you all the way through. As long as we can take care of you, we're there for you. And so that's what's really special. What I love about legacies now, it kind of inhibits people who are already on Medicaid waiver to move in with us because we're taking care of our internal folks first. That's what we
Right.
prioritize. So we do still make that business decision for folks from the outside. Like if you were living at a totally different community and you ran out of money after 6 years, whatever, and you call me up and you're like, hey, I'm on Medicaid waiver. Can I move in? Well, likelihood is a lot smaller because I probably have somebody internally who's, running out of money or needs help or something like that too. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one,
Mhm.
that I think like not, and this isn't directed towards your firm, it's just like a tough thing for United States, like for people to think about
Mhm.
because um we all know it's just like crazy expensive. Mm, You know, I don't know about the different levels. They might maybe it drastically goes up in price as you move like to get more and more medical care, but I feel like it's, 5,000 a month for some places or even more than that, and that's a total guess based on like something I heard maybe a decade ago. So
Yeah.
like, 5,000 a month, 60,000 net after taxes, like a lot for people to live on. So you would think that if you know, move in when you're 80,
Mhm.
you're not gonna live, I mean, you might outlive your money.
Mhm.
And so like what do people do when that happens?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, that's such a serious thing you have to look at. And people stay home because they realize they'll run out of money after X amount of years. People decide to stay home because they'll know they're not, anybody can go get a, a financial advisor to figure out how long their money's going to last while living at a community. And that's why we talk so importantly about being proactive with our community because 2 years, we got you. And, um,
That's
the
really nice.
it,
That
it
just sounds like
is
that's incredible.
it is amazing. I mean, there's been so many folks who just, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really cool stories that have been logged up in the old brain, but there's just a lot of really cool moments where you're able to just help these people and they realize there's an option for them. So it's pretty cool.
Can you talk about so like besides money,
Hmm.
what is the negative connotation or what is the biggest hurdle that people face? And is it, and I guess, do you see a lot of people moving in as a couple, or is it usually like one spouse has died and now they're kind of on their own and that's when they start to think about it?
We have been seeing a lot of couples the last couple of years. We've just been seeing a lot of that. It's really interesting that that's the case right now. I don't know. I wish I could pinpoint why, but that's just what we're seeing. Um, yeah, the advice I give to all the couples I tour with, every single one, is do this, make this decision. As harsh as it sounds, we try to be as least salesy as possible. That's our job, right? We're here to just listen and help and guide and be a good resource for these people, no matter what. Even if they don't want to live with us, let me help you find a better place for you. But the one thing that I always say is do this before your other one passes away. It's a blunt reality that people don't realize because when you do this on your own, you are downsizing a house. You are, and then let's say your spouse dies and you decide to move right after that. You are accepting the death of your spouse of 50, 60, 70 years and then making one of the biggest moves in your life, downsizing a house of 50, 60, 70 years, downsizing your husband's or wife's stuff that you haven't even fully, you know, gone through the grieving process of. It is such a gross experience. It is not fun. And so I always tell people if there's any advice I give as a couple, start this process together. Be ready for it because it can come quick. A health event can happen. You fall out of bed in the morning and you break a hip, and then now you really got to be serious about what to do.
This makes me want to like have a bunch of friends that are also like coupled up that
Yeah.
are also going to their latter years and like let's all just buy a big house together,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yes. Heck yeah. We always joke,
like
like me, Jarrett, and Mac, and I think we and Wad. We always joke that we would, move to a retirement community together, and have land
yeah.
parties again, and all that stuff.
Yeah, you guys can set up like a gaming room or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, for sure. For sure. But
um yeah, no, like that is really that's so emotional. Like I'm getting
mhm.
sad because um I don't know, like I've been with Alex since 2011
Mhm.
and I just cannot imagine. So most likely will die first, so she'll have to go through all of it.
Right.
But yeah, like that would just be terrible to go through, like losing all that stuff after all those years and then moving into the facility by yourself and like you don't know anybody and you're like the first thing you say when you're starting to meet new people is like my spouse just
My
died,
spouse
now I'm
died.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's icky. It's
Um
not fun.
So yeah, you could see how like if you'd already moved in, you'd lived there like 3 years, you made all these friends, then your spouse passes away. It's still hard, but like you've really dealt with all of the kind of logistics of like your cars and your house and all that. You probably got your money set up, and then also you have all these friends to help you with the grieving process.
Yeah, I was
Um,
glad you mentioned that because that is probably God. That's the most important and most beautiful thing, honestly, that I see. Uh, we had a. I think I can share this without using names, but we had a lady who's. I worked with them for. And mind you, when I talk about this process of making this move, I'm talking years, Trevor. I started with this couple in 2021, and they just moved in last year.
oh
That's
wow.
and that's me calling them, going over to visit them in their home, doing tours, having them in for lunch and dinner. That's the process, and that's over a 2-year time frame. And this couple, they decided to finally do it last year. They got a cool 2-bedroom. They got it exactly the way they wanted, and they downsized. They just did it so well, and they did the process so well, and they did it in such an intelligent way. And earlier this year, the gentleman passed away, and the wife could not even the amount of support that she had from all of the friends because they're just such friendly people. All of the friends that they just made, all of our staff that were there. It is an overwhelming amount of support that you get when are surrounded by people like that because everybody's so many of those people have gone through so much loss, and the best experts on loss are the people who've lost the most, and
Yeah.
that's what they're there to, and it's a beautiful thing, really. So
Yeah, and that makes sense because like all the people you'd be living with have also already went through the emotional process of moving in there.
hmm
Like they all live there, so they can relate.
right,
And then there's a good chance that they've experienced physical loss, cognitive loss, or loss of family and friends. So I'm
totally,
sure they're all perfect people to help.
totally. And going back to kind of again trailed off a little bit, but back to your question, what the hardest part of this decision is that um that independence. You're losing your independence. I'm moving. I've lived in my home forever. That is the number one hardest thing people have to accept. Is that yes, in a way, from the where you're looking at it, from your perspective, you are losing independence because now you're giving up your car, maybe, which is also a really hard thing for people to do. You're giving up your house of, again, 50 years. That's 50 Thanksgivings down the drain, right? But you've always still got them in your memories. But you are then moving. That's also a really hard thing because the last time some of these people have moved was when they built their house for $7,000 in 1952, right? Like that's the last time these people have moved, and now they have to go find a realtor, and They never dealt with a realtor. They bought their house off the back of a J.C. Penney catalog. I mean, that was their life. That's all they knew about buying homes. And now they're starting this renting process. I'm putting my money into something that's not giving me any kind of value. It's just kind of it's a different perspective. I think our generations, it will be a little bit different. I think it will be as the boomers slowly get to that point, I think it will change quite a bit. You're getting people who, in my opinion, want those extra services. They want that extra support. They love, like, I don't have to cook. Hell yeah, get me in there right now. My money lasts me 20 years. I'm good. I'm 80. I'm ready to roll. Let's go. I think they're going to be more service minded, and not to say that they're not independent minded, but it's just the generation that I'm working with right now. They are just tough SOBs all the way through.
Yeah, that is really interesting to think about. You know, in most of our careers, we work with people that are about up to age 65 because
Hmm.
usually they retire and then we don't work with them anymore.
Hmm.
But when I think about 65, I don't know, is somebody that's 60 to 65, are they considered boomers, or that is that starting to be the top of Gen X,
I
you
think
know?
that's top of Gen X, so I think it's like 60. I think it's like just right at boomer, around 60 to 65. I think that's like
Yeah, it might
the
be the
tail
bottom of
end.
boomers
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
But I would say most of the people I interact with are in their 50s or lower. And
Mhm.
so boomers for I guess are really just like my grandparents. And you know, I I'm 37, so
Mhm.
I think of them as when I was 5,
Yes.
throughout the course of my life, they've always been very capable people. But like you said, worked really hard, went through the World War. Well, geez, no, that's terrible. They didn't really go through the World War,
Yeah, but like
because
tail
like
end of
let me
maybe
do
World
them.
War II and
I'm trying to
Korean
do the math.
War.
They probably were born right after World War II, right?
Mhm.
So they went through more of
Korean War probably. I mean, that's what.
yeah, in Vietnam.
Yeah, Korean and Vietnam are really. I'm see a lot of our veterans that are coming in are. I mean, World War II is there's very few left out there nowadays. So
Yeah.
a lot of these people are teenagers during the Korean War time. So that's what a lot of the people that I work with are right now.
And I think of being stubborn, and I don't know, maybe that's not a fair thing to say, but I think of like, when you're at that age in life, you have really formed your opinions,
Mm,
like whether it's on politics or like the way the world is today and the changes going on. And it's almost like, who cares? Like, this is my opinion. This has been my opinion for 60 years, you know?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, like, um, just really feeling like rock solid in where they stand on things. And so, yeah, like moving into something and giving up all their independence, I imagine is probably very hard to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And again, it's just a
Um,
matter of perspective. I'm not giving up my independence. It's just I don't value taking care of my meals anymore because I've done it for 50 years. I'm tired of it. I can't do it anymore, maybe. And realizing that us doing those things for you allow you to go have the energy to go be independent, go do whatever the heck you want to do.
well, and the, 55 plus community or the independent living, truly not losing your independence, but just getting services.
Right.
And like maybe you even keep your car or something.
Mm-hmm.
That
Completely.
doesn't sound bad at all. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that if somebody can allow themselves to get on board with like, I am selling my home that I've taken a lot of pride in, and what I'm gaining is more freedom almost.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is a huge win. I'm sure some people can't get over that hurdle,
Yes.
but
I've
like,
had people move in at the earliest age of probably about mid 70s to late 70s. That's kind of younger for me. When I say younger, I'm talking mid to late 70s. And
yeah,
I've had a lady move in at the age of, God, how old was I think she was 98 years old, moving into assisted living. And I mean, that's amazing to make that change at that age. You have lived your whole life in your house, you know, for 50 years, and you're just now deciding I can't do it anymore. I'm 98. It's pretty baller.
Yeah.
That's pretty baller.
I My grandfather and grandma decided to sell their house and move in and start renting.
Hmm.
And that was like, I don't want to misquote it, but it was like 10 to 15 years ago. And they like still live there and don't need assistance. They're doing great. But they made that decision, and I think when they made it, even their children and their friends were all kind of like, you know, it was a shock because they owned a home and they didn't need to do that.
Hmm.
And I think it was a little forward thinking of them to be like, actually, there's a lot of benefits into not owning the home and getting all this help with stuff.
Hmm.
So maybe, that's an example, a rare example of like somebody doing something like that. Maybe that happens more than I realize, but none of the rest of my family did that. It was just them.
Right, right.
Um, okay, so I saw something on Instagram that stuck with me probably a year ago. Like I don't know how I got it, but it's sort of along these lines, and it was like basically said that there's tremendous benefits in a grandparent moving in and living with grandchildren. So it would be like um if my mom and dad's like my grandparents, let's say the one that I talked about, they live in the apartment. If they needed to look at moving into a home, or even if they didn't, even if just like today, my parents were like, yeah, you can move in with us. That's not a great example because my mom's kids are all out of the house. But
Yeah.
like, what if I like let them move in with us or something?
Right, like let's say Steve and Lisa are like 20 years older right now, and they're like, "Hey, can we
Yeah,
come live with you
yeah.
in Washington?" Yeah, yeah.
Well, and I actually talked with Alex about this,
Hmm.
and we talked about her parents and my parents, and um, I don't remember where we landed with every single scenario, but we did say that my mom and dad, Steve and Lisa, would be welcome to live with us. And so there's supposedly benefits for the grandchildren and also for the grandparents.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's like an alternative that um, you've ever thought about or you've compared with like your situation, but do you have any thoughts on that? Have you heard of that being a thing, or what do
Yeah.
you think about that?
No, I totally do. I That's a really cool topic you brought up. So I'm gonna go really broad, real quick, and this is what's fascinating to me. The United States of America is the only ones that have really that have so much business investment in retirement living. I mean, you go overseas to Europe, Japan, Germany, you can go any other country, you will not find an independent living community with amenities. They're just now getting to Europe. We were at a conference a couple years ago, and a British gentleman stood up, and he is in London, and they're opening the first independent living community there. They're just now starting that. United States of America are like the only ones doing that. So what are those people doing? Well, they're living with their grandparents or their kids or whatever. And I think it's such an interesting thing because at work, this is naughty, but we call it the kid in the basement. We don't see it as mom living with them. We see it as the kid living with mom still. And it's kind of a negative way to look at it, but unfortunately, some of the situations I have come across, how do I put this delicately? I just see I've seen it where the parents maybe are taking advantage of a little bit. Uh, Sometimes there is a adult child who has their own issues and can't leave home, and I've seen it where the mom and dad in their 80s are still taking care of. Almost, I'm cooking and doing laundry for this 50-year-old son who has no issues and doesn't work. I've seen those, and I have also seen the side of where it does work, where um, mom moves in with the daughter, and I think it can work. I think it can. totally dependent on personalities. Totally dependent on personalities. Um,
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, just like I'm trying to find a good example in my head. So there was a okay, here's a nice one. So I had a lady who moved in with us a couple years ago, and she lived with her granddaughter. Her granddaughter had 7 children. Grandma was being more of a caretaker for those grandkids than she could do anymore, or
Yeah.
and it felt like from my perspective she was caretaking more than she was being taken care of, and she's 92, like um and so i I think ultimately, though, I think it's just dependent on personalities and what's important to you, because still, uh, in this economy, one spouse working is kind of a hard household. A lot of the times you're needing two incomes to make a household work, um, and so both of them are at work, and then grandma's stuck at home alone. Okay, so what is grandma getting out of living with you? And it's also still finding what's important to grandma. Is it helping take care of the house with them? Like, I have okay, I have a mom who lives on a farm, and her son is a farmer, so he's busting butt all day, comes home for lunch that is made by mom, and eats lunch, and he leaves, and she starts making dinner and cleaning up the house. You know,
Yeah.
but it works. It's kind of like a transactional relationship in a way, but um, a lot of the times, though, I have seen it too, where they just get to a point where they just can't be taken care of at home anymore, and you're on top of you wanting to be a human, still needing to be a human being, having a social life, and not having to take care of mom anymore from a child's perspective. You need to also think about, can I take care of mom and get her what she needs in her everyday life? That's such an important thing. I mean, if you were like, if you're 37, wouldn't you want to, I don't know what age bracket you hang out with, but I would assume you'd want to hang out with people around your age who relate to you more, who also have kids who can relate to you, or going through the same troubles you're going through. You want that at that age too. I mean, hanging out with your daughter all day playing cards, and you know everything about your daughter, so totally dependent on personality, but I think there's just so much value in a community setting.
Man, those are really good points.
Yeah. I've seen
Because
a
like
lot,
going
man.
into
I've seen a lot. I tell you what.
yeah, those are really good. Because I was just thinking like, oh yeah, this is definitely way better just have grandma move in.
Right.
But I do agree with you that like, let's say I was the one that was elderly. Your whole life you do kind of want to be around people your own age. Um, and personality wise is important. I remember that was one of the things Alex and I talked about. We were like, okay, what is this person's personality like, and would that work, and so on, and this
Mm-hmm.
person's and this person, like, um, and you really want to be fair. Like, well, if I'm going to do it here, then I'm going to do it here, so that everybody's getting fairness. But then, does the personalities really work, or are you just doing it to be fair?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also, I do think like financially, how does it work? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, if it costs a certain amount to go to the home or whatever type of facility you're choosing, is it if it's cheaper to move in with your children and you think the personalities and you think it's going to be great and you're excited to be around the grandchildren, that could be good, but it's still going to cost something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little awkward for the basically whoever's house it is to go to mom and dad and be like, hey, I know it's still cheaper, but like you got to pay something because utilities are up more, or we're probably buying more groceries now that you're here, and we're buying more toilet paper, and when Christmas time comes around we're just going to buy you stuff too, just
Yeah.
like you're
Right.
part of the like just everything,
I
just
gotta go
like the
shopping for
things you
mom
don't think
now.
about.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Totally.
I do think that when I think about my mom and dad right now, I know they're capable of doing whatever. So, like, I could easily see if they moved in with us today, Alex and I would be like, "Hey, you want to watch the kids while we go on a date night or something
Yeah,
like that?" You
yeah,
know? So, like, and after a year or two, you wouldn't even feel bad about that. You would just be like,
they're gonna do
"Can
it.
you watch the kids tonight?"
Hmm.
You know? So I could see that.
And how full? You know what? If it's fulfilling for them to watch the kids, hell yeah. I mean, do it, make it work. But if they're like, oh, okay, I kind of had some plans to go hang out with my other friends today, but I'll watch your kids instead. So, yeah.
Um, I do think that, um, I think that there's benefits where it does give them a sense of purpose. They may feel more comfortable moving in with like a relative at first. Like maybe it could be a stepping stone where like they do that, but then if eventually they need actual care, you have to kind of like take the next step.
Hmm.
Um, I think it gives grandchildren a sense of like who their grandparents are, and there's like a lot of um, care going around for the grandchild.
Hmm.
Because like as a parent, I think Alex and I actually do a great job of like we kind of are somebody's always with them and we're bouncing back and forth. But if Alex is with them all day, by the end of the day, it's not as probably easy. She's losing energy. And then even with me, I'm not with them as much, but on the weekends and by the time bedtime's rolling around, I'm usually like at a point where I'm not as fun as I was when I first kind of hopped on duty.
Hmm.
So like if you had another set of grandparents there, and everybody was rotating, I feel like the kids are getting the best of whoever's with them,
Hmm.
you know?
That's a
I
really
do
good
think
perspective. I think that's a really cool perspective, though.
the last thing I guess is when you're talking, I thought it was interesting how you mentioned like all the European or the other cultures that do this type of stuff. Um, that's just like their culture their whole lives.
Yeah.
Like, grandma that's moving in probably was a child that lived with their grandparents and so on. So like they're all used to it.
Hmm.
But like it's not a thing here. So if somebody did it, it would like if I had my mom and dad move in, that would be new for them and new for me because like when I was growing up, no one lived with us. Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I do think that it's different in the US. Like I saw that thing on Instagram. I think it did now that you mentioned that. It was talking about how in European cultures, like I always picture Italy, like they all live together.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's just not how it is here.
No.
So it would be like a total culture shock for everybody.
Hmm. It is. Yeah, it really is, and I think I think the United States of America being the United States of America, so business minded and focused with the economy and everything. I think somebody saw a potential in this industry, and yes, while it is a very profitable industry. I mean, skilled nursing communities, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars a month, tens of thousands of dollars, and it's profitable. There is profit in this, but it's interesting because it's also still creating so much care for a lot of people that need it and a home for people that really need it.
Um, okay, so I think I just have this last question and then maybe we can go over to something else. But um, one thing I'm getting into for myself, and I think it's just a new thing in general that people are talking about, is longevity.
Hmm.
So I'm sure you have to have seen stuff about this on social media or people talking about it. Um, but and it's okay, maybe you haven't, but like I hear it everywhere. So
Hmm.
maybe it's just on my feed. But do you have any thoughts on people I think are living longer in average, but also just like the younger populations wanting to live longer. So they're really conscious about like having movement every day with stretching and exercising, what they're eating. Like people are making a really conscious effort to not eat processed foods. They're seeing information on like what foods specifically are terrible for you, and at least they're able to avoid that. like, I think we just had this huge period of time where we got less and less healthy. And I do think that, I don't know about on average, but I think your Gen Z, maybe some millennials, are like really getting aware of this type of stuff and intentionally want to have longevity.
Hmm.
Like it's kind of interesting to see a 22-year-old being like, "Oh, I'm really concerned about longevity." Because like when I was 22, I felt like I could live forever and
Yeah,
eat sticks
no
of
matter
butter all
what.
day, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But I think there's so many people that want to live a long time that when you and I do get to the point of needing to go and do a place like this, I mean, the average age could be like in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
And just how's that going to affect, your industry and all that?
Yeah, I love that question too because it's a question I pose with my coworkers a lot too because we talk about really we the only one we can gauge a pretty good idea of is kind of the boomers because we're getting boomers moving in. We are people getting to that generation where we are seeing more of it. And so we can have a better guess on what they're going to desire, what they're going to want, and what they're going to expect. And I can't tell you how many kids that I'm working with right now, which are the boomer generation, who are moving in their parent, and they're like, when I turn this age, I am moving right away. They are ready to just retire, to officially be done. And uh, it's so hard for me to see what it's going to look like because, it has grown not only financially. I mean, for independent living, that's anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000 a month for independent living. Imagine that amount in 30, 40 years. It,
Right.
it seems
Yeah.
it's so impossible for me to actually, understand. And I'm like, this has really allowed me to put my feet down and realize that I need to save for retirement because this shit's expensive. Like it is not cheap.
Yeah.
So, um, and it's only going to go up. There is no way it'll ever go down. It has gone up every year since it's been around. So it will continue to go up. So what I would like to see, I think you make a good point though. Like this generation is really looking at, they're taking fish oil supplements and they're taking sea moss supplements. That's a new thing I've been seeing. I mean, they want this. I think they want to stay around for a long time and have a good time at the same time. I think that's what they're
Yeah.
looking for. And with medicine and how much it's been able to evolve over the last 20 years and technology, I mean, God, what is that going to look like in 2050 when we're still like, we'll be middle aged at that point. And it's fascinating. I don't even know what to expect. I don't have a good answer, but I just know it'll be really interesting. I mean, we'll have 120, 130 year olds at that point, maybe. Who knows?
That would be wild.
I mean, if they find a cure for Alzheimer's and they find a cure for cancer, hopefully in the next however many years, it kind of seems more likely that they would. Hell, I see a lot of longevity. Holy cow.
It is wild to think that it could be regular for people to live into their hundreds, you know?
Yeah. Like how it's regular now for people living into their 70s and 80s. That's was not something in the past. Even
No, I
90s. I'm
mean,
seeing so many 90s and up.
yeah. I do feel like 80s is like no big deal.
Yeah,
Like I know a lot of people that are 80 that are doing no like
great.
not much different at all than when they were 70.
Yep.
Other than maybe like there are certain things that are extremely heavy but they're not very big, like really dense things.
Mhm.
And I don't think they have an easy time moving something like that, but they
Yeah.
think they probably can.
Yeah.
Like or like moving a giant couch,
Mhm.
but like taking care of themselves, getting up and moving around, they're doing fine,
Doing
you
all
know?
right.
So,
Yeah.
um okay, so one of the other things that I saw you mentioned you're into that I am really curious about is Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just gonna let you start. You, if you would, tell us about your Dungeons and Dragons experience,
Yeah.
and then I'll have lots of questions.
Oh yeah, dude, bring it on. I love it. Yeah. No, this is a game I have been passionate about for a long time. And it is a growing game. It is becoming a big part of the mainstream. For two reasons. because of Stranger Things. I'm sure you've seen Stranger Things, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
yeah. So Stranger Things, they are really normalized it. They normalized it being a thing and in social media without being the nerd in the basement. You know, it's not the nerd in the basement playing D&D. It's these badass kids going to fight demogorgons, and
Yeah.
it's badass. And then also this stream, this Twitch stream company called Critical Role, they normalized it as well. So Critical Role, and I'll kind of explain D&D after I kind of talk about this, but they just started streaming it on Twitch, their story. And these are professional voice actors who play these characters, right? So in D&D, you make a character. You create its you have your class. I'll kind of go into mainly the personality. You're creating a character who has personality, who maybe he's a hardened veteran from some you know knight who was uh, neglected by their king, and king went, let's say it's like Game of Thrones, you're Jamie Lannister, right? Like you're like that's a whole ass character right there. You just make that in a character, right? Okay, so you have your basis in your personality, and then you're also picking the fun stuff. So like your class. So are you a guy who's going to just swing around some swords? Are you going to be a stealthy guy who swings around some daggers? Are you going to be a mage who's going to be whipping out some spells? So you're creating a really cool personality and you're creating a really cool class. And then the third thing you create is your backstory. Who are you? Why are you adventuring? Why are you meeting these people now that you're playing with all of a sudden? And so you create your character, and usually you have anywhere from 2 to 5 other people at a table. And so you always have one, what they call DM, so dungeon master or game master. And then you have, like I said, 2 to 5, sometimes 7 or more players. So the dungeon master, which is what I do, sets the stage. They create the story, they create the uh, situation they're in, they create the world sometimes. They they create everything. They start this process, and then the players just you go back and forth. And it's also a game of chance because you roll dice to see, I want to hit this guy with my sword. Well, you got to roll a certain number to get it. Let's see if you do. Well, and you fail, and then he hits you, and you might die. And so there's some sort of excitement, behind all of this, and there's real risk for your characters. And um, what I have, so that's kind of the basis of Dungeons and Dragons. That's kind of how you play. That's how you kind of start the game. That's how you get it going. Um, and one thing that is really cool that I'm super proud of with my friend group that we've been doing this is that we started it in August of 2022. And I grew up, my dad played it in the 80s when it was like new, when it was being, like slandered by the church because it's satanic rituals and shit, right? So
Oh
like
my
that's
God.
that's when he was playing. In small town New York, that was a very intense thing. So um that's when he started playing, and I grew up as a nerd. I mean, he got me into Star Wars, he got me into comic book, like comic books and Gundam and anime and and Dungeons and Dragons. And so our first game that I had ever played was like 2015. And like there were a few times where me and a couple buddies got together and played a couple games and never really got into it as much, but it was fun. And we 2017, 18, I think we really got into it again, played quite a few, sessions is what we call them, anywhere from like 2 to 6 hour sessions of you just playing, and
Yeah.
they go like that. It's awesome. And then, like I said, August of 22, um, I started with a couple of my Lincoln buddies, and we've been going strong, and we've been playing almost every single week. Like it is a consistent thing, and a big thing in the D&D community is like we can only play once a month because we have to line up 8 people's schedules, right?
Right.
You got
Yep.
people with kids. I mean, in my group, we have people with kids and, night jobs and morning jobs. I mean, and we still play every week almost. And we have played like 70 sessions of at least 4 hours each, like
Right.
300 plus hours of this one game and this one story that we have played. Um, and it's just a blast. And one thing, the biggest enjoyment piece that I get out of it is being the DM. I get to write the story. I love. I mean, and Game of Thrones is a big inspiration for me with the twists and turns. Oh, they wouldn't, and then certain character dies, right? Like that's what
Yep.
is so like holy shit. I just want that. I want them to like eyes widen, grip their hands, and like, oh no fucking way. So I love to tell the story. I love writing, and I never knew I loved writing until 2 years ago. And so we have concocted this massive world with so many fun characters and an insanely, in my opinion, really detailed and cool story of like loss and betrayal and death and sadness that has been able, like, they've grown through it. And just last week we went into, I had this big reveal planned, and one of the bad guys is the dad. What? That's your dad. Why is he the bad guy? Like it just like
Yeah.
mind blowing. It's just those moments that are so thrilling. I wish I could play every day. Like I want it to be my job. It's just so fun. Sorry, I shouldn't be swearing so much, my bad. But
Nate, I'm
yeah.
I'm so excited that you're talking about this, man.
Yeah.
Like, um, I have like I have a little bit of background I'll tell you about my experience with D&D,
Oh, really?
which is like nothing. I
Okay.
have never played,
Yeah.
but I have a little bit of experience. But one thing I did know was what a dungeon master was.
Okay.
And I really did want to ask you if you were one. And I just like thought there's no way that you would be,
Hmm.
like so that's so exciting to me
Yeah.
because I just want to know one. Like I
Yeah.
really do. I genuinely want to
You're like
know a dungeon master.
you're like talking to some buddies at work, and they're like, "Yeah, we play D&D, but we don't have a DM." And you're like, "I know a guy." That's
Yes,
like
I
the
know
biggest
exactly.
value behind it. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean,
um,
it's go ahead.
Dude, I can't believe you've been doing that. I mean, I have way more questions now. I feel
Mhm.
like we could talk about this
Oh
for
god, I could
hours.
talk about D&D forever. Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so I just want to establish a couple questions I have about the rules
Okay.
before I kind of like go further.
Yeah,
So,
do it.
um, okay, so you're I know this is a super easy question, but like really quick, like my character can die, right? Like if
Mhm.
I roll something and I'm fighting a guy and I lose, what does that mean?
Yeah. Okay.
Like what if I'm in your friend group, we've been playing for 2 years and my character just dies? And
Totally.
it wasn't planned. Like you as the dungeon master didn't write that in. It was
Right.
just like I rolled the dice and I'm dead.
You fucking
Now
died.
what?
Right. Right. That's a really. I
Yeah.
love that. So there are. Okay. I'll talk about it in a really so basic. There are two types of there's more than two types of encounters, but there's combat encounters and then there's social encounters. And then let's say there's like real world, like game world encounters. Okay. So game world encounters would be like if you jump off of a 100-foot cliff. Well, yeah, there are numbers that I have to roll on my end to tell you how much damage you get dealt, but you're probably going to die, right? Social encounters, could be okay, so an example less treacherous is with social encounters, but you could be talking to a dude and you're trying to convince him to, like have him give you information on this bounty that you have. You're trying to find a guy or something. And you roll a persuasion check to figure out, hopefully my persuasion is good enough to uh get him to tell me what I want to know. Well, if you fail, he may not like you very much and he might hate you or whatever. But so that's social encounters. And then there's the combat encounters. So that's where you're doing combat. We are fighting. You get your spells, you get your weapons ready. I mean, you're going ham. And it's a turn based combat. So you roll a certain number, like let's say, we call it initiative. So it's just whoever gets the highest goes first, and it just goes down from there. So let's say Goblin attacks Trevor, and you go down to 0 HP, right? You're out of HP. You go down. What happens is you go unconscious, and then you roll something that is called death saves. It's a death saving throw. Okay. If you get 3 failures on a death save, you're dead. You have to give me your character sheet. This is the rule. It's brutal, man. It's brutal warfare out there, all right?
Yeah.
But but if you roll 3 successes, which is a D20, right? So 20 sides to a die. You have to roll a 10 or higher for it to be a success. A 1 to 9 is a failure. It's
Okay.
that simple. But it's scary because while you're unconscious, Goblin maybe saw you murder his family and now has a hatred towards you, and while you're unconscious is going to hit you. And if he hits you while you're unconscious, that's a death save. So that's, and you have one, right? And then, oh, I rolled bad on my turn. Goblin's turn again, hits you again, and boom, you're dead, right? Hand me your character sheet. There has been one time in our 2 years where I had to have somebody hand me his character sheet. Um, but it was also a sort of uh, excitement, like a little like, oh, plot twist, because we had my girlfriend just join. My girlfriend plays with us now, and
Okay.
she had just started, and she had a spell that revives somebody who's, if they're dead within 1 minute, she can revive them, even from the dead, right? So he didn't know she had this spell. He hands me his character sheet. He was so pissed. Oh my god! I thought I was gonna get punched. I was like, fuck, he's mad at me. He's so mad at me. But then she casts a spell, and they're just like, holy shit, you can do that. And I give him his character sheet back, and boom, he's good, you know? So it's,
Okay.
I love the theatrics behind some of those things. But um, so yeah,
Well, and that's like real emotion, I think.
yeah.
Like,
I mean,
because
that
you
is,
might have that character for a year or something.
yeah, he was playing that character for a year, for like a year and a half, probably. That is like 50 sessions of gameplay of this character who, especially for him, I kind of made him, his backstory kind of the main storyline at the beginning. And like, plot twist, his spoiler alert, his best friend uh ended up being this guy, this big bad guy they had been chasing this whole time, and he didn't even know it. And oh, plot twist again, his best friend was captured in a way by a demonic soul, and so he's like tethered between, death and like his, it's still in his body, but like in this, captured like in a cage, really, and so then there's this like, okay, do I kill my best friend? Do I kill the bad guy? Am I killing him to kill the bad guy? And so there was like a lot of raw emotion around his character already, and so a lot of this was built up around him, and then sniped him dead, so it's just, there's just so much that could go into it. It's super fun.
Um, so let's say you're with a group of people like you sounds like you typically always are,
Mm.
and you've got the dungeon master and then there's everyone else. Do people break off on their own? Like, I'm kind of going on this side quest. I'm going to go find this object and try to bring it back to the group. Or do people always stay together? Do people like make decisions as a group? Like, okay, we've encountered 3 doors.
Yeah,
Do we want to go through one of the doors? Do we want to like turn around and leave? Do we have to decide together? Or can I like just say, I'm going through the middle door? How does that sort of like, is that a
yeah,
conversation or how does that happen?
yeah.
You know?
It's fun. So rule number one, do not split the party. That is a widely known rule. Just don't split the party. However, you're right, though. There are times, and from a DM perspective, I love splitting the party because it gets like this edge going. Like, I forcibly split them up. Oh, man, because they're on their own. They don't have the support of somebody to come heal them or do more damage with them, like, they don't have that support. You are free to do it, though. You can totally do whatever you want to do. It's just maybe a roll of a die. But yeah, if there's 3 doors, a lot of the times the party may say, if there's 6 of you, maybe you do two, two, and two. It's hard going on your own can be kind of scary, but there are times that happens a lot, especially. So one of our characters, he's a rogue, so he's all about stealth, being sneaky, gathering intel, coming back to his boys and saying, "Hey, this is what's going on." So he does a lot of stuff on his own in that way, but he can always get away because that's just kind of his specialty. That's what he can do. But if you're going in on an army on your own, dude, good luck. Like, you're gonna die. But uh, yeah, it's kind of a widely known thing to just don't split the party.
Okay, so let's say I'm the stealth guy,
Hmm.
and I've gone off on my own, and I'm going to try to learn some new information that I can hopefully bring back to the group.
Yeah.
When I roll and it's my turn, and you're the dungeon master, and you're letting me know what intel I've just learned, do you like whisper that so that the
Mm,
rest of the party doesn't know? Or because if you're just kind of telling me and you just said it right in front of them, even though they don't really know because I'm like off on my own,
yeah,
how
totally.
does that how does that work? You
Yeah,
know?
like again, I kind of enjoy the theatrics and the dramaticness of, the how much drama you can put into it. Uh, so yeah, I love I don't do it as often as I should, honestly, but yeah, by all means, just tell them something in secret because they are still their own character. They may have this backstory. Oh, my parents died and so now I'm out to do good. But in reality, they killed their parents maybe, and they're the bad guy. And like they're not a good person, but they're telling everybody they are. So telling them secrets allows them again to continue making this decision of, do I tell my party what's going on? Do I, like let's say you loot off of a goblin a 500 gold, right? But if you did it stealthily, nobody sees it. So are you keeping that? That's totally dependent on how you build your character and what you want, how you want your character to play with the other players too.
Okay, and then um let's say I've got my character sheet, I've designed my character, and we all kind of know what my character would do. But then when it's like in the moment, I just am feeling different. Like, I designed my character like Jamie Lannister,
Hmm.
but then one day I'm just feeling very Jon Snow. Like, can I
Yeah.
can I act uncharacteristically, or am I typically required to behave like my character?
You are not, I don't think you're required in any way. I think you play your character however you want. And it's hard, we're not actors. We're just people with a day job, getting together to play D&D. So we're not like, it's not like we got to commit to this character because it natural instinct is for Trevor to play his rogue character as Trevor because that's you're not an actor. You don't know how to play a different character. You don't know who,
Yeah.
you're just doing you. And so you don't, there is some people are big on that, like you have to play your character how you would. I'm a lawful good person, so I would never go steal something, and then you decide to steal something. But I say just do you and just have fun with it. Bottom line, I've always thought the least amount of rules that you can have in D&D, the most fun you're going to have, because literally the last two sessions that we've played, which was about 4 hours, was us not just talking. There was no combat. It was just us figuring out this really cool storyline stuff, them figuring out some really cool plot points, a lot of jaw-dropping moments, and like that's the thrill that we get to have. But not everybody is the same way. Some people just want to come in and kill a bunch of shit, and cool, good for you. But we have a pretty good thing going where everybody knows their character pretty well, and there is a point where another example. So one of our characters is a paladin. Okay, so when you're a paladin, you take uh, this oath with a god. Okay, this god, and he was like, "I am taking an oath," and maybe you're taking like an oath of devotion. I'm going to devote to protect these people, right? So he started out as an oath of devotion paladin. He was devoting to protect the people from this rebel cause that they're kind of the main bad guys, right? And so over time, though, he grew less like I'm protecting you and more of like I'm killing these guys. So as a really cool change, there was a point where he like brutally murdered somebody that was the bad guy, and like you can describe it like you kill somebody. I'm like, describe how you killed this guy, and you can go full like anime insane, like did a 360 no scope on this guy, and that's fine because you killed him. It's cool. That's the fun part. Um, and so I was like, okay, roll a d20, and he rolled a natural 20, which is like, oh, crazy. And so I had everybody else leave. So I had everybody leave the room, and I was like, okay, John, you then I give him like a vision from his god, and he's like, you have betrayed your oath. You are no longer a protector. Now you are an avenger. And so now he's an oath of vengeance, which gives you different stuff and different abilities and different cool spells. And uh, you can really work in how you play your character, though, in a very, thematical way where you're changing even just the core abilities or the style of play that you do too. So, you know, yeah.
I love that.
Hmm.
Um, as a dungeon master, how much time do you like? I guess maybe just talk a little bit about what it like. What is your experience like being a dungeon master? How much time do you spend writing before each session? I'm really curious, like when you get together, do you sort of have like a story arc for each session? Like, okay, we're getting together on Tuesday. On Tuesday, this is sort of like okay, we're in this town.
Hmm.
There's a mystery. I hope that we have solved the mystery by the end of that session. Or is it like totally open ended? You have no clue where it's going to go.
Right.
And you just gave yourself a couple little points of like, well, if they do this, I'm going to go here. But I really don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a really good question too, because it is such a mixture, and you genuinely have no idea. You have four people in front of you, and you have no idea what each one is going to think or do. So there have been times where I swear to God, Trevor, I labored over writing the next session to be like the coolest, like most badass thing, and it's going to be so fun. And I did. It just recently happened. And like they're in this. I'm kind of doing it in arcs. So there's like arc one where they found out, oh, his best friend's the bad guy. Okay, arc two, they go and save the city. Arc three, now they're in a completely different like universe kind of thing. They got transported and they're doing some crazy shit. So now they're saving this world that they're in. And man, and right now, like I was thinking this would be like a quick 5 to 10 session, maybe like 4 to 8 sessions in this world, right? And that would be it. And so I had everything lined up. And then at one point, they're like, we're going to go south instead. And I swear to God, I spent hours that week writing up this entire really cool plot point to save this main city, then kill the big bad guy because he was in, or the boss, or the king because he ended up being a bad guy. And then they were like, we're going to go south instead. That was like 15 sessions ago. And they just finished the area that I had originally planned for them to be in however long ago that I spent hours on. But what the beauty of it is that yeah, I have to sidestep really quick, and you have to be prepared for anything. And that's where a lot of the excitement is. That's where a lot of the some of our best sessions that we've had are me going in without any plan, without any idea of what they're going to do. And you also build this world and you're so into it. You know your Game of Thrones lore. I know my lore for my world pretty damn well. So I can take a lot of stuff that and just and roll with it and have a lot of fun. So, yeah. And there's been times where it's not even just like the dungeon master, yeah, they create the world, but also the characters help fill it. I create this outline and you help me fill it with these cool characters and the cities and what kind of city they are and the bad guys there and whatever. Um and a lot of times, like, it's interesting, they're I don't know what I'm doing with something, right? Like, here's this dwarf and he makes stuff out of gold and he's kind of insane. And they're like, oh, what if it's a dwarf from this city? And I'm like, which we had like traveled to like 30 sessions ago. And I'm like, that's a really good idea. So then I just roll with it, and I'm like, that's
Yeah.
what it is. And I didn't plan it, I didn't think about it, but now it's like this major plot point in our current story. And I don't know, there's just a beauty in this like improvisation and just going with the flow.
Yeah. I think I am like envious and would love to be a dungeon master, but I know I like first of all, I think it probably requires a ton of time that I
Yeah.
don't have,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But also like the improv, I'm like a planner,
Ah,
you know.
yeah.
Um, George R. R. Martin talks about there's like the outliner writer,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the gardener, and the architect and the gardener.
Mm,
And the architect like plans every single thing, makes all these outlines, and then just kind of writes it. And then the gardener is like no clue where it's really going. They're just planting seeds,
just
and
kind of,
things sort of happen.
yeah.
And he says he's a gardener, and I think that that's way harder.
Oh,
You know?
yeah. Because man, yeah, and that's a really good definition for him, considering he still has books to put out. Like he's
Yeah.
got stuff that he planted, and he's like, I'm already planted these trees and they're fully grown. I don't know what to do with them anymore. I feel like that would be really hard to do it that way. But
Well, it's kind of like what a dungeon master is doing
yeah,
too,
yeah,
because you're reacting to what the players are doing.
that's true. Right.
So I said I wanted to talk about um, why I'm kind of interested. Of course, I watch Stranger Things, and I was curious to know like what your thoughts are on Stranger Things. So
Yeah.
in a minute, definitely let me know, because like I'm curious. Like, do you think it's mainstream? Do you think it was like um, amazing that it came out and totally like took Dungeons and Dragons to this new level? Like, so I'm as somebody that was into Dungeons and Dragons before Stranger Things, I'm really curious what you think about it.
Yeah.
But um, just really quick on what happened for me, like I watched all of Stranger Things all the way through season 4 and knew that they played Dungeons and Dragons in the show,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that the show is like it's very meta, like about Dungeons and Dragons. Like I didn't know
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
I just loved the show and I knew that they like to play.
Yeah.
But I later learned that like the Demogorgon and the Mind Flayer are like actual Dungeons and Dragons bad guys,
Yes.
you know?
And
Um, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and the coolest part is they didn't even like skimp on design, because if you look up what a Demogorgon is in D&D, it looks like that. And if you look up
It
what I
does?
mean, Mind Flayer's different, don't get me wrong, but it has the same concept of what a Mind Flayer does in D&D. And D. And then
Okay.
Vecna, like you look up a picture of Vecna in D&D, they made Vecna in Stranger Things. And so when they're talking about how it feels like it's a Demogorgon, because for them it is. It literally is, from a statistical standpoint on what the Demogorgon does in D&D is what the Demogorgon does in Stranger Things in a way. And so it's super funny.
Is
And that's what I love about it.
um you know how they have like the other side, or what do they call it?
Yeah, the
Like
upside
there's
down,
the
right? Yeah.
yeah, the upside down. Is that a thing in D&D?
You know, I think I don't think it's really a thing. There might be like a certain plane of existence. I think that might maybe like limbo or something like that. But yeah, that's a good
That's a
question.
cool concept. I've
Yeah.
always liked that.
Hmm.
Um, but okay, so there's a podcast I watch, um, and it's called Your Mom and Dad, and they talk about reality TV.
Mm.
And Alex and I are super into reality TV, and so we've been watching that, and then we listen to podcasts that talk about it.
Yeah.
And there was one woman on hers. She did it with like one of the reality TV stars, and they did that for probably 6 or 7 years. And then the reality TV star like retired or wanted to do something else. So the other woman just started Your Mom and Dad with her husband.
Mhm.
And they live in LA and they still review reality TV. But in between shows, they kind of need to like think of other topics to talk about. And it just so happens that they have like a really good friend in LA that was like talking to him about D&D, and they were like, "Hey, will you like, do an episode where you come over and just make up an episode?" They both like wanted to play, and then they had their person who does a lot of the editing play too, and then they did a second episode where they had a famous like reality TV star come and play with them. But basically they were all in a room, they recorded it so you could see this whole like interaction kind of come to life. And the dungeon master had been doing it a very long time. He's in a band and he's like a vocal guy, so he can change his voice.
Hmm.
And so he's constantly like changing his voice and being, if he's like a random guy working at a pawn shop, he kind of changes his voice to be a pawn
Yeah.
shop guy.
Hey,
And
what are you doing here? Can I get you an oil
yeah,
fix? You know?
yeah, exactly. And but the people like they get to make up their characters, and they talked about the rules a little bit, but I like could not get I had to like stop what I was doing. Normally I like listen to the podcast version, but I like switched to the YouTube version and was like watching everything because I
Really?
was so drawn into it, and I was just like, um, you know, Dungeons and Dragons has not ever been anything that I knew anything about or wanted to play. I didn't know anybody that did play. And again, I didn't know until watching those episodes that Stranger Things was even about it. Because I was talking to a friend about watching these podcast episodes, and that friend said, "Yeah, Stranger Things really normalized it." And I was like, "Oh, really? I didn't even put two and two together,
Yeah.
you know?" But it just looked like the most fun,
Yeah.
especially if you have a good dungeon master, because then you get to just kind of be along for the ride. Like you just make your character and show up, and
Yeah.
hopefully the dungeon master did a good job,
Yeah.
you know?
Totally. Totally.
Um, but it's like I'd love to play, but like I looked like that people play online, but it's probably better in person. And also like you've got to have this group of people that is like committed, and you have to
Yes.
have a really good dungeon master. And
Yeah.
it's just a lot of things have to
Yes.
come together, you
Yeah.
know?
It does. And also, so it's from our campaign started with two buddies, Lucas and Jamie, and they are full on nerds just like me, and they love all nerdy things. But they never got into D and D. And I talked about it probably at nauseum. Like, guys, I have this really cool world idea. If you just want to just play one session and just see what happens. And they were kind of reluctant. I mean, it took me like a little while for me to just keep bugging them about it, for them to just finally say, all right, let's try it. And I was like, yes. And 2 years later, they're obsessed with the game. And
Yeah.
but once it does take the perfect storm to make it work, because uh, there are a lot of, yeah, like you said, the online stuff. I've heard good things. I've heard a lot of bad things, and there are a lot of horror stories out there of things. That's what they're called, D&D horror stories, and it's hard. There's some pretty screwed up stuff out there, but uh, so it can be hard to find that group and to get going. But there is some really cool resources out there, though. I mean, there's even a resource where you could zoom in a DM. I think you pay them like per session. I've seen anywhere from $10 to $20 a session, and you just pay them to come be your DM for like 4 sessions or something. And they come in with this pre-built story, and you just play for a few sessions, and you just pay some money for it. So, I mean, there's some pretty cool resources out there to make it work. So,
Yeah, no, the guy who was on the podcast, I
hmm
can't think of his name right now. But like I think he kind of blew up after going on that podcast because he joined as like their friend so
yeah,
they could do a D&D episode, but they'd never done that before. But in the reality TV world, they're huge. Like they have probably 200,000 subscribers.
yeah,
So he goes on there and crushes it as a DM, you know.
nice,
And like a couple weeks later, he started a Patreon, and like he says that you can pay him, and like he'll just like do a session for you. Like
sweet, sweet, that's
he
awesome.
says like people can literally call him and just like he'll
Hey,
just do one on the phone like out of the blue.
get out of
Like,
here! That's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. That is cool. No, I think uh, there's a lot of cool stuff behind it all. And going back a little bit to what started all of this, like why it's probably the most played, it's called tabletop RPG is what it's called. It's one of the more it's so heavily played now, compared it's the most played it's ever been played, is what I'm trying to say. And like we said, Stranger Things was a big part of that. And another piece was, like I mentioned before, Critical Role. And so their intro is, welcome to Critical Role. We're just a bunch of nerdy voice actors that love playing Dungeons and Dragons. And then they're actors. They are voice actors, so they are just bringing out the highest quality of D&D you'll ever watch, because it's masterful players playing with skill with their characters, but also amazing storylines and insane backstories and crazy moments of so much excitement and sadness. And talk about normalizing with Stranger Things. They did it too, because they're on every Thursday night. They have a new episode on, and they've been doing it for, God, I bet you 9 to 10 years now, and they have had over probably about 400 episodes of 400 of this D&D, and we're talking 4 to 6 hours every episode. 400. It's crazy. And so they got such a huge following from all of this that, um, again, they're voice actors. These are people, and these are like pretty good voice actors. Like, I don't know what you watch, but they've done a lot of really good anime, a lot of really good animated shows, and a lot of video game voice actors too. And what's they do so well is just getting these the fans to just love their characters, and they started then doing live shows. So you go, like, if they're in a stadium and you watch them live, they sell out every single time. It is a packed house, and it's just so fun.
Jeez.
And on top of that, they started just creating this awesome culture around it, a positive, cool culture around it, where it isn't the nerd in the basement like it used to be. It's not the, are you a South Park fan? It's not the World of Warcraft dude. That's just, with the computer. That's not who it is. These are normal people just getting together. And so really what struck and what made national news was, God, what was it, during COVID, maybe, right? Maybe 2021, maybe right before COVID. I can't remember. But they started a Patreon, they said that they needed $1 million to make a one episode animated short of one of their stories that they had done for their 400 episodes. Within 24 hours, it raised like $10 million
Oh my God.
or something crazy. I think they ended up with 10. I don't remember how. I wish I could remember the number, but it was tens of millions of dollars they ended up with. And then Amazon saw it and said, "Yeah, we're going to definitely buy that." And now they have a multi-season deal with Amazon because of how much the fans were like wanting this. So it started out as one episode, and then they're like, "You guys made us so much money. Here's 6 episodes now." And then Amazon saw it, and it made how much money within a month, and said, "All right, we're buying that." And so now they're finishing their second season. They're finishing their third season, and then they have another season coming out of one of their other campaigns they've done in the past. So, like, they really came in and just
And
now
this
they're
is called
crushing.
Critical Role,
Critical Role. Yep.
and you can watch this on Amazon.
Yeah. So they have their actual on YouTube, Twitch, and all that. It's called Critical Role. It can be kind of tough to get into. I mean, you're used to listening to podcasts though, so it's kind of helpful. But again, you're listening for 4 hours. It can be a lot. So, but yeah. So then they have their animated show on Amazon called Legend of Vox Machina, which is their group name was Vox Machina, which in German is voice box or something, which they're voice actors, so it's kind of a funny thing. But and they just, yeah, like I said, they've really just pioneered the normalization of the game, and now it is massive. And now there are hundreds of critical roles out there, of people making content and people eating it up, and I am one of those people who eats it up. So
Well, I'm definitely gonna check it out.
highly recommend.
Um,
It's cool stuff. It's really cool.
I get into super long videos. I think I've told you, it sounds like you remember, but like, I'm super into Game of Thrones, and so I'll listen to this guy. He's called In Deep Geek,
Hmm.
and he does a live every Thursday, and it's usually about 3 hours.
Oh
And
wow.
then he does like 20-minute videos. So he'll take a topic and do 20 minutes, like super deep on that topic. And then when he does lives, he just takes any question and he just talks for 3 hours.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I try to catch him live, but then I always watch the whole thing back. So I'm just like and I've been doing that for like 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
So I feel like I know almost as much as like I don't, but I feel like I know a lot because I hear him and he repeats the same stuff a lot because similar questions, but
Sure. So he's kind of like
um
the after party, like, well, like uh how Walking Dead always had their the after the
yeah.
whatever that was called, the After Dead or whatever it was called. They basically, he kind of does that where he just rewatches it or takes in questions or whatever, or something like that is what he does basically.
Well, yeah, so he has Patreon and he says what the topic's going to be. So sometimes he'll do an open Q&A, but sometimes
Okay.
he'll be like, he'll be like, this session is going to be on like House Baratheon, you know,
Oh, cool. Okay.
and then people have all week to submit him any question they want on House Baratheon or House Lannister, or maybe he'll do like just Tyrion,
Sure.
and people will be like, um, did Tyrion really do this or
Yeah.
whatever? And then, people will ask him all kinds of questions. And he researches the questions he gets ahead of time. So he has like really good answers.
Mm.
But then people can also do super chats, like pay money and ask him a question right there on the spot. And then he'll answer that on the spot.
Oh, cool.
Um,
That's cool.
but it is kind of cool. Like he reads out your name. Like I've given him like, $2 and then you ask a question and he'll say your name and then he reads your question. And if it's a good question, he'll be like, oh, that's an interesting, and it's kind of cool because he has like 800,000 subscribers and
Nice.
he's like basically talking to you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
That is really cool. What's it called again? In
In Deep Geek,
I will definitely be checking that out. That's cool.
he covers like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and Lord of the Rings.
Oh, Lord of the
Um,
Rings. All right. Okay.
and yeah, I mean, I don't do Lord of the Rings, but there's a huge community of people that are into Lord of the Rings, and he can tell you like anything you ever wanted to know about Lord of the Rings.
That's
So,
awesome. Oh yeah, I'm looking at him right now. That's wow. Yeah, he's got videos. Holy cow. 571 videos. Oh, wow.
well, and he has In Deep Geek Live and In Deep Geek, and the In
Cool.
Deep Geek Live is where all the lives are, but I think he used to do lives on the main one, so you can also see some on there, but you can see they're probably from a few years ago.
Yeah. And he pumps out a
Um,
lot of videos. Cool. That's awesome.
yeah. But like, really interesting stuff too. Like, just for example, did you watch the show
Of
Game of Thrones?
Yeah, I have not watched the newest season of House of Dragon yet though, so I need to get caught up on that.
Okay. Did you read the books?
No. I have them in
Okay.
my audiobook like catalog ready to go whenever I finish some other stuff I'm on, but yeah.
Well, there's just stuff like Jon Snow receives a pink letter, and in the show, it's from Ramsay, and he reads it, and it gets him to like leave the wall and go fight. You
Yeah.
remember that?
Yep.
Calls him names, and it says like what I'm gonna do and all this. Well, in the book, he receives a letter, and it says it's from Ramsay, but like there's a reason to believe that it's not from Ramsay. And if it's
Mm,
not from Ramsay, who's it from, and why did they write it? What was their motivation? And um, George R. R. Martin is really big on like doesn't matter what the truth of anything is. It's just like what do people believe? So like, do the old gods exist? Do the
mhm.
tree god people exist? Does like Melisandre, she believes in the red woman.
Mhm.
It's like some people will be like, is the red god real?
Mhm.
Or another like, is she really seeing anything in the flames? And this in deep geek guy usually says that what George R. R. Martin has said in interviews is that like we will never know if the gods are real or not, but that what matters is like if I believe that this God is real, I'm going to act upon that belief, and that affects the way I treat all these people in the story. Um,
That's
and
a
it doesn't
really
matter if the God is real or not, you
Yeah.
know?
That's a really interesting way to put how even how he writes. Like he puts that into perspective of his characters too. Like and what's awesome is like they could all very well be the same god. The old gods could just be the red woman, or the red woman could just be
Right.
the old gods. And but it's not that
Well,
way.
and
And so,
people have that, people get really into that. Like
right,
people,
right.
they really want to know.
That's cool. That is.
Um, so it sounds like you're pro Stranger Things. Like
Yeah,
you
no,
like the show.
yeah. I think they. I mean, it's not like they focused on it being a D&D show, but it's just as far as the show and the characters are, yeah, I mean that is a fantastic show. D&D aside, I mean, it's just a great show all the way around. But how they portrayed D&D, I think, was the beginning of a positive outlook on it, and I think that that was what it needed to make people realize how cool it is. Anybody can play it. Anybody can play it.
Um, Last thing I want to talk about, just real quick, and then we better hop off.
Okay.
But so we had mentioned a little bit about AI,
Mm,
and again, just really quick, I have basically one question.
okay.
So I wrote, I don't like talking about this on here too much, but a long time ago, I wrote, essentially, I wanted to write a book and I wanted to write a long novel series. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to spend my life working on this, like, because I wasn't in a hurry and it wasn't to sell it and make money. It was just like for me.
Hmm.
So, but I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to make a universe first. And so I was calling it like a Bible, but really I don't know what to call it. But it's essentially like I made a map and then I got like a big piece of paper and I made this like map. And then I like had countries and mountains and rivers and
Sure.
kingdoms. And then I was like, okay, I got to name everything. And I named like all the mountains and all the rivers. And I was like,
Yeah.
here's the ruling people. And then I was like, all right, now I'm going to write lore for. And it took me like 4 years and I had not ever started the book. I just like was building this
The
world,
lore,
you
the
know?
world around it. Right.
Yeah. And so I had this like huge thing. And it's probably like the Silmarillion worth of
Hmm.
it's just this massive thing that
Lore
talks
drop,
about the
and
world, you
yeah.
know?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And like I have probably written like I don't know, 3 to 400 characters and it basically includes their name, how old they are, their siblings, their family tree, their families like lore and intentions and values and then like each character gets a little paragraph of like what they're like, you know.
Hmm.
And then I wrote 75 pages of the book. And
Nice.
then I thought, um, no, I'm going that I was like, okay, this is gonna be an adult series, but I like decided to stop. And I was like, okay, in the same universe that I already built, because I didn't want to like redo that, I was like, I'm gonna make a kid's book that's just gonna be shorter.
Love it.
And I was like gonna make like a few books there and then lead up to the adult book. So then I started like the kid version and I got like 75 pages in again, and then I just stopped.
Hmm.
And so now this kind of brings me back to AI. My wife went to college and she has a degree in English and she wanted to be an editor.
Hmm.
And I was like, hey, babe, I was like, I built that universe. I've told her about it and I started the book. And I was like, if I get a paid version of AI, I think I could probably like basically take pictures or like everything's saved on in files on the computer. I could like probably get it to consume what I've the universe. And then I could like ask it questions about the universe and like not have it write the book, but be like,
What would this character
help me create an outline. What would this character do?
do?
And if I want this character's arc to be da 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 like this is what they achieve at the end, help me understand how that could look.
Yeah.
And basically like it's not writing any dialogue, but it's like very much assisting me in this process because part of the problem was like I got an outline written, but like when I had to sit there and be like, okay, like it's 7 in the morning, I've got an hour before I have to go to work, and I've got like I'm on page 76, and I'm like, what just happened the last three
Mm,
pages? I kind of need to remember and read this. And then like, okay, this person, I know what they're supposed to accomplish by the end of this chapter, but like, what do they do now? Who are they like? Are they gonna bump into this person and talk? And is that even really relevant? How much fluff do I need? And like the writing process, like I didn't go to school for that, and it was
yeah.
just really hard. And so I just kind of got stuck. And I was like, but maybe AI could greatly assist me. But does that still mean I wrote the book?
Mm,
And she has her opinion, which I don't
mhm,
love.
mm.
But I'm just curious, like, like you could probably use it for helping you with dungeon master
Yeah,
duties.
and
So like, what do you think about
I
this? You
have
know?
used it for assistance with D&D duties. My opinion. Oh, that's tough. Yeah, it's tough because okay, so I will throw this perspective at you. Let's say instead of you bouncing these ideas off of a computer, you're bouncing them off of Alex. What's the difference between those two? What's the difference between getting an opinion from a human and getting an opinion from a robot? I mean, and a very high functioning AI, mind you, that can really take in all of that information better than a human could and still spit out a pretty cool idea for you. I mean, if it's if you're having it write something for you, then it's not you. But if you're just getting ideas, I think, yeah, I think that's okay in my opinion, because at the end of the day, though, you're not writing what it's giving you word for word. You're gonna maybe like again, there were some times when I was DMing, where I've been DMing, and I get stuck on what to do next. I just am like, yeah, writer's block. You're just like, I don't know what to do here, and all I did was they are traveling to this jungle infested area. What do they see? And they give me like six ideas, and I don't
Yeah.
take it word for word. I just go, "Ooh, I'm going to work off of this one," and just take 5 words out of it and create a whole session out of it. Right. So I personally believe that there is a benefit to it, because if you can do, oh, that's not a good way to put it. I was going to say, if you can do with it what you can do with another human, then it's okay. But if you're making it, having it do art, well, that's not okay in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question, though.
Yeah. It's just like an interesting thing to think about. And um, also, it's sort of like, is this going to be the future anyway? Like,
Do we accept
um,
it? Do we just?
yeah, like my wife loves to read, and I do too. She can read incredibly fast.
Hmm.
But I was telling her, like, well, pretty soon, like, the books you're buying at Barnes and Noble are probably just going to be totally written by AI. Like,
Which
are
is
you
scary.
like,
It's weird, like.
I
Are,
mean, you may not. I told her, like, I don't know, I could be wrong, but like, if I'm somebody that's just like tells AI to write the book, and then I'm basically editing it, change this here, I like this, but go with this, because you can like highlight dialogue and be like, change this person's tone of voice,
yeah,
keep the same message, but tone of voice needs to be more goofy.
yeah,
Um, but if I can write a book that people want to read in a day because I'm using AI versus somebody like George R. R. Martin, I mean, like, I do think that it's going to be inevitable that most, content is created by AI
yeah.
soon,
Or
you
at
know?
least, and how I think you're right, unfortunately. And I think the thing is too, like, how can we even track if somebody used AI for inspiration? We would never know that. Jay-Z looked up some new lyrics with AI because he needed something to rhyme with orange, and was out of ideas, and used AI to get that, and was like, "Oh, that's a good rhyme. I'm gonna do this, this, and this," and then write a song, and it makes Billboard charts. Like, how could we even tell if that's what it was? So yeah, that's tough. It's going to be an interesting world with what they decide to do with AI. I think it prevents human creation, and I think human ingenuity. I think it halts innovation. I think it stops those things. So that's what I fear. We have been a species of innovation since we created fire. That was innovation right there. And so, especially in the last 100 years, 1924 looks a hell of a lot different than it looks right now. A hell of a lot different. Even 2004 looks
Yeah.
quite a bit different than what it does now in every technological, medical, and scientific way. So, is it going to stunt these things from continuing? I could see that. I think it could, because I will say, when I had used AI to even just, I've had it like test write a couple of sessions. I just wanted to test it out. I just had it make my session for me, like plan everything that's going to happen. I felt no connection. I felt no excitement from this idea that it created. I was doing it with them and it was fun, but I didn't have a connection with it. While if I write my own stuff, there's a passion I get from presenting it and excitement that I get from it too.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
So, like there was a lack of connection when you didn't write it.
Yeah, totally. It made me not want to like go on to the next bit. It just made me want to not keep going.
What made you decide to use it? Was it like you needed a time
Yeah,
saver or
I did. It was actually when I mentioned when one of my friends was like, "We're going to go south instead." I was like, "Fuck, I need something," you know. And so, and I at that point I had just spent so much creative energy writing what I had planned, and they totally went another direction. I was tapped out. I honestly felt tapped out. I had nothing. I had nothing, and I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I don't know how to incorporate this in my story. And so I just allowed it to make a couple of ideas. And yeah, they were really cool ideas. And I made it work with my world and did it in my own way. But a lot of the basis was made by it. And I just didn't feel as good.
yeah,
So it was interesting. But yeah.
tapped out?
10.
I feel like that's what happened to me,
Yeah,
you know?
75 pages
So I
in.
like,
Tapped out, dude.
yeah, you just you well, for me, it started to get to the point where the first 75 pages just seemed to kind of fly out of me, and I couldn't find enough time to get in front of the computer. Like I just constantly had ideas.
Yeah.
Then at the end, it just got to a point where it was like I had to if a week went by and I couldn't get to the computer, I had to reteach myself where I was kind of thinking.
Right.
And then it was like 20 minutes would go by and I was like, I do not know what to type. And then your mind starts to drift. And pretty soon, like the time that you had allocated for writing just was wasted. I think part of it too is that my daughter was born,
Oh, yeah.
like, right,
Uh,
you know?
that's a
So
busy
that kind of
time
threw a
for a
wrench
dad
into it.
right there, you know? I
Yeah.
mean,
um, but, well, Nate, thank you for coming on. It was really fascinating talking about um, your career and what you're doing. And I just felt like even when we were talking about D&D, you, in my opinion, have a very genuine quality that is extremely likable, and it's so awesome to see. I think of myself as a genuine person too, but um, I feel like you're even more genuine and super kind-hearted, and the world needs more of Nate Liermann in it.
oh god,
I
Trevor.
really
I
mean
didn't
that.
come on here for the compliments, but I really appreciate that. And I see that with you too. I think you are I love how you just dive into what we're talking about and you care. And I think that's and you're intrigued. And that is what I think is really genuine about you. That's who you are. So that's what you need in a podcast host. So
Hey,
thank
I
you.
love to hear that.
No, I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, I think we'll call that a wrap.
Cool.
Thank you again, and hopefully you can come on again.
Yeah, that would be great. Would love it.
All right.